Hey, what's up, guys? As promised, I was gonna go over VODs, and I think this VOD here, seems to be one of the closest matches. It was probably the most hype one, just because it was a 2-2, and it ends up going all the way, and it was super close on all the points, like Oasis usually ends up being. Sorry if I'm coughing or my voice sounds a bit off. I'm actually getting pretty sick, so we'll have to power through this. But I was really interested with basically how they stuck with pharmacy on both sides of the point. So on, I think it was City Center and what was the other one? It was City Center and then this map Gardens. They stuck with the FAR where I really would have liked them to switch to retake, because we can watch here on both these two submaps. The FAR that is on defense is able to play so defensively and so far back. The other FAR has to play so super aggressive, and it allows the tanks on the defensive team, or the team that has the point, to just jump on them and then air dive them in the air. And we can see how on each of the sub maps, actually, like, the FARs are actually just getting destroyed the entire time. So, oh, this is gonna be tough. My nose is like completely plugged, so we'll get through this though. It's tough. All right, whatever. Mirror comps. Let's make sure we're on the right. Okay, yeah, one source. Okay. Okay, what's really important here is basically which team is taking which position. So sometimes you'll see teams wrap around, take the high ground over here, and then look to play this platform as like a area to help dive the Pharah and try to get the Mercy, Pharah or Mercy, off the initial thing. But it seemed like both the teams both kind of like walked into this area, and now it seems like they're just straight fighting each other in this little block. So it's basically important to see which Pharah gets more value. So like, it's very similar to Garden on Lijiang in the fact that, like, a lot of times it's decided basically who hits more rockets if you force tank cooldowns, where the tanks decide to go, but there is much more area to play, where usually on Lijiang it's just like this area, and it's just tanks fight in this area, but there's walls that they can hide behind, so you basically decide which area you want to fight in. And so whenever you have this side of the point as Toronto, so we can rewatch this is actually important. This initial positioning in a fight really decides how a fight will end up. So we can see how basically we only see Dalton's POV, but we see their tanks going over there, and then Toronto's tanks were over on the adjacent side. We can see this Lucio actually has like a really late, we can see him over here, he's really late to actually rotating. I don't know if the plan was not coordinated, because he's taking like a really super safe path, and a lot of times Lucio, you can see Cruz over here, he's taking like a direct rocket with Guardian, but he is standing over here with his tanks, where Adam is actually taking a really safe rotation right now. And we can see this kind of like not having the Lucio there, I think really leads to them not being in a good position, because at least when your Lucio's there, your tanks are actually way stronger, where I think Adam's having to make like a really weird rotation. I don't know if this was miscommunication or something, but we'll have to see. Because it seems like Adam like did like a rotate that he thought the tanks were going to like walk into the point, and they end up not. And they kind of rotate out over here. Well, he did this like pathing decision to like go over here, so maybe he thought they were going to fight in a different area. I don't know. Seems pretty strange when I'm watching it back. But you can see that Toronto has the sustain advantage here, because they had their Lucio sitting with them, healing them, while Adam had this weird rotation. So even though Nero doesn't hit any rockets, they had the sustain to just beat them. And you can really see here, the tanks are getting like destroyed. Once you have this area, basically Toronto's like game plan was to take position of the map. And so once you're actually in here, this far is really hard to actually get at from the tanks, because they can only dive from like really these areas, and they have to use their cooldowns all the way up into the air. Where if you're on the opposing team, the FAR is usually having to come in over this lip over right here, and if your tanks are ever standing right here or on this ledge right here, it's super easy for the FAR to get dove from this angle right here, so like it's harder for their Pharah to walk in. The angles for them to get out are really awkward because they have to like jump. If they're fighting in this area right here, they have to jump and then kind of like loop around the wall to like actually get out of line of sight, and so it's like really awkward pathing for them, where a lot of times if you're fighting here and you have control of the point, you can jump and play on the high ground or just walk underneath the little bridge right here to just line of sight and play safe while you get healed up, while the other team just has like this really awkward pathing. You can see here they really get punished for that. Once you have Pharah control, it's really hard to just actually have any control over the point after that fact. You're just going to pick up his mercy. There's just some cleanup kills. I can't tell if this is source. I feel like it's not. Alright, what are we at? I'm just going to refresh it. Alright, I think it's good now. Good. We can see here. So basically, like once you actually have control of the point, it's really easy because you can just park your tanks in here, over here, on the ground, over here, and you just have all this area, the big box inside the point. You just have control of all of this space area, and then the Pharah for retaking, she really just wants to come in like these like boxes right here. So there's like a box over here as well, where like she wants to be skybox, so she isn't going to get air dove as easily. But when you have the tanks that have the cooldowns available and they already have the high ground and they're already sitting in these really advantageous spots, the Pharah walks in or just hovers in these locations, and then it just makes them so susceptible because like you don't have to like actually go that far into the air compared to being on the ground. So it just like creates this area where it's really hard to retake the point just because you can just air dive the pharmacy at like really advantageous positions for you, while the other team really doesn't have good positions because your Pharah can be hovering over coast or just really high inside the point, and it's really hard for the enemy team to actually get in. So you can see some teams, they just immediately, if they lose the first point, they swap Soldier Zen, they swap Genji, they just are trying to do everything in their power to not take this Pharah duels because it's really hard to actually retake with Pharah. You can see right here, at least they're attempting to do something different than having them go main. But so you can see XL2 is, instead of using their cooldowns to get around and like a dive from main, they're wrapping around the side and they're looking to get pressure this way rather than having to use their cooldowns, so their tank abilities to get inside the point. They're using their Lucio speed boost to actually rotate around. You can see Clone Man focusing Cruz. They're putting all their focus on him. Playing super aggressively here, but the trades are really hard because it's so hard for the Pharah to actually get inside the point from outside. They had a good rotation and like they were using their tank ults, I think, as well as they could have. Like they got on Cruz, they insta killed them basically as fast as they could. But they kill Cruz, but we can see that no one else really has been punished on their team, and Clone Man is taking the brunt of all the damage. While Plumple is still capable of using his tank ult and having like a lot of HP. So if we look at the effective HP, they traded basically Clone Man's regular HP and then a lot of his Primal Rage to actually displace people for Cruz's HP and Plumple's like HP. So they traded like 2/3 of this, but Clone Man isn't going to be getting any more burst HP anymore, while Plumple's going to be able to use his Primal Rage if he really needs to actually survive. Plus, Adam is really low now. We can see here, whenever you don't have the cooldowns and you don't have the pressure really to do anything, Tracer's really able to just sit on the point and put clips into people. Like if you don't have your tank cooldowns, they use their tank cooldowns basically to execute on the Lucio. And then Tracer's able to play at like this optimal range where she was just clipping the tanks and she's really able to just put into them. You can see it's just a cleanup on the fight. So we can see Midnight, like, as a trade of ults, like, the first fight didn't go well, and so he didn't get that much ult charge that fight. The tanks rotated in here, and they executed on the Lucio. They got the kill, but you can see Midnight really didn't get that much ult charge. Like, he got demacked, and he really wasn't able to do much. He was just trying to play in this circle over here and stay alive. Guardian was able to use his self-destruct, and he's already building up another one. And they only traded, like, they used Diva Bomb, and then both of the Winstons used their ults, and so we're at 50% already. The next fight here, they're going to have to be using ults, and they can basically trade evenly somewhat, so it's important to keep an eye on ult cooldowns or ult management. I'm struggling here to talk, like my nose is completely plugged. We can really watch right here how hard it is for the enemy pharmacy to actually get into the point. Mangachu is looking for something, but we can see Diva's sitting right here, Monkey's sitting right here. They are both ready and keeping track of this Pharah. If this Pharah crosses this line over here and is in the point, then both of these tanks can both jump up and actually get on her. So they're in prime position to actually punish this Pharah. And Nero is walking up as well to stuff this little box right here. This is the box that, with the rotation that their Pharah is made, Mangachu now only has like this option really, or he has to loop all the way around to get over to this little box over here on the side. And it's going to take a lot of time. So where he's positioned at, it's going to take him like a really long time to rotate, or they just stuff him in this area right here that's really hard to cross. They're trying to wrap on them and like punish them in that way. So we saw that like they wrapped and like they sent a lot of their members. So the pharmacy, let's see if we can roll it back a little bit. I somewhat like what they're trying to do as their retakes. They're trying to split like their attention. So you can see like the time before they sent like people from the side as well as the pharmacy over top. XL2 did. But at the same time, it's really hard to retake. So right here, they're looking to send the pharmacy basically over in this area, but also send the tracer over here, down here, and then have the tanks contesting over here. So basically, they're wanting to bait the tanks' cooldowns and then have the tracer over here in this area come down, and then once the tanks fall on the ground, have the tracer attempt to one-clip them basically. I think it's a good understanding. Like Plumple is like actually getting punished right here. Like you can see, like they tried to bait him to jump up into this area to actually fight Mangachu, and he drops on the ground. He immediately gets pulse bombed, and they have to beat to keep him alive. But if we're paying attention over here, this box is something that still the pharmacy has not been able to cross. So they've been playing like super safe, really far backwards right here, where Nero has basically been controlling the sky. You can see him; he's up here, controlling the sky. Oh, sorry, he's right there. But he's been able to control and play over this area while the enemy pharmacy of XL2 has been really far zoned. They're really far back, and they're not getting the same value, whereas pharmacy is playing above the point. Both these tanks are on the ground. They don't have any cooldowns. They're not getting as much value, and they're not able to punish this Pharah. So again, it's just another case of it's being super difficult for XL2 to actually get into the point. There was a late beat here. This beat basically gets no value. Adam tried to save Clone Man, but they were in a safe enough position where they can reset the fight and res. So the beat basically gets wasted. So they've lost their ult beat advantage because Cruz used his to save Plumple in the fight. Adam uses his too late, and they end up just like using a shield basically to keep Goliath alive, who really didn't have any pressure on him. You can see here, as soon as Mangachu is over the top of the point, the tanks are immediately coming to execute on him. you can't be this far into the point without getting punished, because if the enemy tanks have to like cross so far to get into the point, where the enemy, like the tanks that are defending, a lot of times can just sit under here and then just go straight up in the air. They don't really have to like go much distance at all, where at an angle you have to go much further to contest the far end. She can play a lot safer. So there was some poor ult mismanagement here, and as well as it's really difficult to retake with Pharah. You can see how it got shut down with just the areas they were holding. Even with like some seemingly smart plans to actually like flank and pull pressure, like they've really just not been able to take control of this point. Another case of just Mangachu has just not been able to get any value with this far. He's not been able to get into the point and actually really do anything. Guardians really shut him down. And then a lot of this is just cleaning up the fight. It's killing staggers. Okay. Let's get forward. Now we can basically see the mirror of this, and XL2 looks to do this to Toronto. They really look to shut them down. Well, it's equally. Like, they're both looking to just shut down the Fars in this. With such an open airspace, a lot of times it's similar to the other map, but you can have both tanks playing on the high ground here. So this circle over here is something that a lot of the tanks will play on, and it forces these pharmacies to play like a little bit further back, just because this high ground right here, a lot of tanks can play on it and then look to air dive. See, there's a lot of mirroring here. There's just a lot of trading of HP right here. It's really similar across the board. I think Dalton's just not getting as much value. Besides that, everyone else is about equivalent. There's like a little bit of trades where like Dalton has less ult charge, but Clone Man has more than Plumble. So it's just like just small trades. Cruz has more healing. A lot of this is just poking these tanks down and seeing how the enemy team reacts. So a lot of times the Mercy will actually end up floating down, and it creates a window where you can actually hard commit on them. And then it's a baiting game, basically seeing like, oh, if someone loses mech or if you lose monkey, is the other team going to play more aggressive, and seeing if you can counter that with like a really early ult and look to punish them. But okay, XL2 gets the better of them. Again, I really would have liked to have seen some swaps here. I know these teams probably aren't the best at it, but retaking with Pharah is so hard. We see another case of Pharah's having to play this limited skybox whenever they're trying to retake. We can see Mangachu gets all this free air, like all this free air, and then there's only these limited boxes that they can fly over, and so it's just like really easy to hit rockets and send divas to fly up there. So it just makes retaking so difficult. You can watch this retake. Dalton's getting harassed. Again, I think it's just paying attention to these Faras, so creating a distraction. I don't know why we were on this tracer cam the whole time. I'm trying to get an idea of the fight outside this, but these trays are just jumping on the jump pad looking for pulses, really. Trying to get a gauge of how this fight's actually going. I wish I could see that. Okay. Does Mangachu just fly too close? Okay, I think he just straight up gets double rocketed. Because we can see that there's no tanks that were even contesting him. The tanks are all just down here, like, mirroring each other. And it looks like it was just a straight Pharah 1v1, basically, where he just hit more rockets, so... That's a pretty big misplay, because you can play a lot safer whenever you're on defense with Pharah. That was actually a super, super good res. Midnight does a good job of using his Diva Bombs not to just reset, but also to take out the Pharah. He did that once on Garden as well. There's so much open space here, you can really pay attention to throwing your Diva Bomb whenever you know cooldowns are out and actually winning a fight just straight off that. Mangachu gets that like cheeky boop from the side. He's able to not cruise off. You can see you have to take these different windows. Basically, if you send your Pharah over with your team, it's going to like be really easy for the enemy tanks to get a ton of value, because you can see right here, this Diva is looking over here, looking to counter the Pharah, and it creates this room for these tanks to actually play more aggressively. So he's able to throw a free Diva Bomb here while this Diva is focused elsewhere, where if he was actually getting stuffed here by the tanks, he probably wouldn't have this room to actually do this. So he's actually able to get a free Diva Bomb there just because of the pressure that the Pharah was causing. It was an absolutely huge retake. Guardian actually played crazy right there. I think I'd like to recap that. If the video will load. It appears it's not loading. Okay, so we talked about this basically. Midnight was sitting here looking at Nero rather than actually stuffing the tanks actively. So he gets the big Diva Bomb. He remax, and then he gets a ton of room right here to actually do whatever he wants. You can see he's really playing well with his Pharah right here, and then looking to just get cleanup kills after the fact. Opens the Diva Bomb to like get the initial pick, and then gets 50% ult charge after that, just cleaning up kills. Actually really impressed with how he played that. You can see there's like a bunch of like mirror matchups happening right here, where basically you try to get the advantage of one of them by playing differently. So you can see like the Tracers are over here fighting jump pad the whole time. A lot of times it's tanks kind of playing like further back, looking for like dives with the Pharah or just making plays around the Pharah. Pharmacies are both just chilling in the air, opposite of each other. And we can see if you're making plans with your other members of your team to maybe play more aggressive on the pharmacy or punish the Lucio or something, that's how you're going to end up winning these fights. But Nero over here, he stuffs Mangachu again. Whenever you're on the defensive side, you can stuff these Pharahs into really awkward angles. Got a really poor angle right here, but I really want to see what happened this fight. Nero was doing really good about stuffing right here. This jump pad also, for tracers, gives you a lot of room to, if you're playing on the defending side, you can really bounce up here in the air and then start to be an actual threat on the pharmacy as well, because you can actually use your dashes and maintain your aerial height, and then you can look to like dash, triple, or double dash and actually put pressure on the pharmacy. So it adds just this extra threat of being able to like have a diva and a tracer and potentially like one far rocket and then tracer one clipping your mercy or your far out of the sky. We can see Dalton go for that right now. He tried to triple dash at this Mercy right here and actually like put pressure on them. And like if the tanks or if anyone else on Toronto's side was actually here to follow up on that, this would have actually been like a really big play. But you can see it wasn't really as coordinated as it could have been. The problem with doing that, as you can see, is the play wasn't executed correctly. So Dalton went up, and then Guardian followed up after the fact. Where I think if they would have both went at the same time, knowing like the timing window, which is probably a fact of having like a Korean and an English speaker on the same team, it's just not going to be the same thing. But Goliath gets to live, and then Diva has already used her boosts, so she's going to end up falling basically into the enemy team, and then she has to like retreat. And during that whole retreat time, she's probably using her Matrix. Nero is playing really aggressively as well, and so he's going to end up getting pushed back. And it creates this situation where you're like, you've used your cooldowns, you're kind of in no man's land, and then you have to start using your alts to basically just maintain your HP. So he has to use Monk Primal and Valk just to maintain their HP because of the poor play that happened. And then they can start to get pushed in on. It just gives a window for the other team to actually push up. I mean, Toronto had to use ults there, and XL2 really didn't use anything, so it ends up like working somewhat in their favor just because they forced ults and didn't die themselves. It's basically a valuable dry push. They kind of played this slow and were taking ground really slowly just through a choke, like they were basically line of sighting and then just walking in slowly so that the Fars can have this duel right here, and then both the tanks are now playing on the ground, so they don't have as much pressure on Mangachu anymore. Unless they were planning to basically bait them in and then use a Diva Bomb, but I'm not sure. You can watch this right here. Clone Man gets really hard punished. I don't know if they were playing this correctly. They really seem to give up like a ton of ground here and then not really. Like, I'm not sure if they were baiting him and then. I'm not really sure how Clone Man takes this much damage and is over there. Um. Okay. Um. I'm not sure if Clone Man's dive got messed up or something, but like he ends up being over here in this area, and then there's just a Tracer and a Diva on top of him. So of course he's just gonna die. This is pretty strange. Getting pretty desperate here, but you can see Basically, their plan before, where they like got the Winston alt and Mercy alt, is actually paying dividends because they now have a way larger alt bank, and because of their 2 dry pushes before, even though they were kind of like super sloppy and like didn't get any value at all, they basically fed no alt charge and just ate the clock up. To now we're at the point of it's 99.99, and they're going to be coming in with a much stronger alt bank. So Guardian is really good about getting huge diva bombs. Super good matrix. Something to pay attention during this fight is that basically XL2 got like a lot of value from their Mercy alt, and so you can see that a lot of people are full HP. Clone Man's just finished his primal, he's basically healthy. Plumple had to use his, and they've already lost Shu. Basically see the value they got from getting those alts out earlier. They got more value from their alts, as Toronto's alts were like a bit more staggered because they were 2 people behind. I don't know if I like this barrage as much. I guess he's just looking for like an active trade with the situation they're in. Goliath didn't actually end up sticking a healer, so they're actually like really low healing, so they actually need to like burst and kill things. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but can't always rely on this to win your maps, but it helps when you have a tracer pop off. Um, get triple kills. It helps, especially when some of them had beat still on them. This fight is like really staggered and like all over the place, and they're basically like fighting on the zones of the point. So you can see like they're fighting zones over here, and people basically just playing aggressively, seeing if they can get any picks. I think they thought they were safe here because they had like beat like on a lot of them, but this stick is actually insane. Um, yeah, that was actually insane. Okay, we have different compositions now. For once, it's not mirror pharmacies, and it seemed like Mangachu this series he had like some points where his Genji was going off, other points where it was pretty underwhelming. I'm still not 100% sure on his Genji, but I think his Sombra play has been pretty good. Except for, I think, what happens this fight. So I'm not sure if his team was ready to follow up on him right here. We can kind of see there's like a 3-man unit playing together over here. Clone Man's playing aggressively, kind of like poking. But in the position he's in, he's already losing HP in it, and he's already used bubble, so I think most likely he's going to be jumping backwards. And then we had D.Va over here in the side room, already half health, getting poked. And then you can see basically all of Toronto is just stacked up in this area right here. So sure, you get the value hack on Guardian, but I'm not sure if it was coordinated here, if they were actually going to go for a fight at this moment. I think like the way he hacked right here kind of sets himself up to die, where he's playing aggressively like they're going to be getting this trade. But I mean, if you're paying attention to the HP bars, Toronto's not really playing that aggressively. They're all like rather healthy. Clone Man's already used his cooldowns, and he's like backing off right here. Diva is like low as well, and she's kind of backing off. You can see all the members are kind of just backing off and playing like a passive location right here. And Mangachu is really the only one who's actually going for anything. You can see his translocator goes down, and Dalton was really just waiting for that to happen so he could just dash at him and actually kill him out of it. So the way you win these fights is getting an actual hack on someone, but I think the aggression wasn't calculated where they had like a really early contest to get poke damage, but they were like looking to reset and back off while Mangachu was playing aggressive, so it was just kind of some weird off timing that shouldn't have happened. And so he swaps to Genji. I think the Sombra would have been fine against this comp, honestly, but there's just some poking right here, and they're just trying to actually get some committal poke onto the Genji or something, and they could actually commit onto it. You can see, though, Toronto's looking to just flank. I was just paying attention to like where people are located right now. So they're trying to retake, so they're basically playing as a big fat unit right here, and they're trying to like abuse our Lucio heals. Well, Toronto is actually trying to abuse like angles, so you can see like Dalton's playing right here on the point to the left of the point. Nero's playing to the right of the point. They're trying to get these angles where they're cross-firing them over here and over here. They're not going to have the same amount of sustain because only one of them is going to be orbed, but they're going to have a chance to get more damage down. You can see XL2, they decide they need to do something, so it's actually a really smart flank right here by Clone Man to actually get Nero's cooldowns out. You can see where he's playing. Nero's forced to dash out. Now they've seen, basically they've forced cooldowns, and so they forced them back into this zone right here. But Goliath is not really in the best location. So you can see how like the area that they've had before was like over here, and then they rotated over here, and then this is the only area that they've ever really had right here. They had Monkey flank right here, but he immediately gives up that ground, and so like the only area that XL2 really has is like this area, maybe over here a little bit. So Goliath is really like in a not so good location because he either wants to be playing on the high ground or playing somewhere where he isn't going to get executed on, because really Toronto, speaking wise, they've had like all this area this entire time, and they've really been able to do whatever they want with it, setting up multiple angles, and it creates these avenues where XL2 is trying to commit, trying to get cooldowns, trying to actually fight people, but Goliath is really going to be left out to dry if they have these kinds of pushes. They really need to secure more ground for him. I think I'm going to die, so everyone knows. Hoping this coffee wakes me up, wakes up my systems so I can get better. Set up in a similar location, so like they have people playing over here, they have people playing the high ground. You can see the area that is limited for them, but they're trying to fan out right here. So like they have this area now, which is actually a much more large area than they had before, but they need to make sure they keep their Zen safe this fight. Again, they're playing aggressively on Nero. Clone Man goes way too aggressively right here, though. He starts playing outside of his bubble, he gets discorded, he immediately gets focused by Tracer and Genji. Both of these trances are awful. We can go over it, and you can watch how bad both of these trances are. Alright, Clone Man's dead. This is a lost fight, and they are resetting right now. Adam is currently getting Dragon Bladed and already is getting slashed through, and then Trance is popped. Trance was literally just being popped to keep Adam alive in a lost fight. And then people are playing inside of a bubble, so they're still getting killed by Dragon Blade. Wait. Did Shu get pulsed or anything? Or did he... I mean, Plumple's low right here, but there's literally 3 dead. 3 dead and it's mid-trance. That is a dog shit trance as well. Oh my god. I didn't even notice that. Okay, Shu just pops his trance to keep Plumple. Plumple wasn't even there. We'll call that a fat finger. That was really bad. Like, that actually got like 0 value and they traded trances, where Goliath was just awful and Shu's did like actually nothing. And Mangachu's about to get Blade. Okay. That's not good. The retakes have been like very similar each time. But you can see here how they played it a little bit differently on Toronto's side. So before they were basically having like the tanks play like over in this area and like over here. And then this time Plumple's playing a little bit more aggressively on this right side, and Nero's playing more so in the spot that the tank's been playing. But they're playing this just for the fact that they know their Winston is going to be playing with Primal this fight. So they're playing to win it. So Plumple's playing like super aggressively here. I think he's taking a little bit too much damage because XL2 is not really committed to anything. They've traded like Midnight's HP for this, but they know he's going to Primal, so it's basically they're like committing a little bit harder for it. A little bit more telegraphed. But the barrier was actually huge by Adam. Like, this actually does a ton of value. That blade is pretty meh. But Adam actually honestly hit like a massive barrier right there. Like, if they lose Goliath, there's potential that they start to like really lose that fight. Potentially lose the game. But this beat honestly gets a lot of value. It's beat and Diva Mom actually. So Goliath is really low HP. We see him right here, and they've popped Primal to try to get him, and their own beat. But you can see how Toronto's beat really doesn't get that much value. Like, Toronto's ult usage was really, really poor that fight. They end up using 3 ults and then still losing the fight pretty decisively. There probably wasn't a lot of communication that led into that fight, and that was something that I managed to mention before the match in my prediction, that their communication might be poor, so there was poor ult usage. Now, Toronto is basically having to retake with poor ult economy, which doesn't end up being good. There's no surprise there. XL2 does not have the same retake strategy that Toronto has. Rather, flip that. Yeah. We can see there are split fights all over the place. Genji is all the way over there. He is fighting all the way over here. And there's a tank and Lucio fight with some tracers playing all in this area. So they are trying to take fights all over the place and trying to make this really messy. Which is probably smart with the lack of ults that they have. NA wasn't able to use his recall there. That's actually really unfortunate. They keep Orb on Mangachu here, and he's able to stall for a while. This is the ults coming back into their favor. Having the ult advantage again It's another fight where ults really help be super decisive here. Having that extra ult bank really gave them a buffer right there, where even though they kind of lost the fight, they were able to retake and actually use their ults. I think that's the second time this series where like the more proper ult usage has really led to one team fights in the following fights where a team has having to retake. So it's super important that you keep track of what ults you're planning on using and not overusing in a losing fight. This is a really poor blade. Some of the blades in this game are really poor. Some of them were really great. Like Mangachu had a good blade there. Can watch this decision making here of what Toronto wants to do for this retake. So we can see already with their positioning, they're looking to take like a bit of a split fight. Doing a bit of scouting, sending two members over here, one with orb, kind of like looking to see who's playing the high ground, seeing if they're looking to poke it all. The rest of the four-man unit over here looking to either like walk over here or walk over here. They're really just weighing out their options and seeing where they are. And we can see that XL only hiccuping a lot, sorry. XL2 is really split. They have a lot of people scouting in a lot of different areas. They're looking for an aggressive dive. The problem with having all these people split up like this is you lead yourself in these situations sometimes where you have like a person over here, they have the tracer all the way over there. If you need to regroup and take a fight in a certain area, you have to use basically all of your cooldowns to get back there. And if you get poked out, so say if someone gets poked out over here, they have to use their cooldowns to get back to them. Where if you have, like Toronto was doing, they had a lot of people like clumped up, all pushing together. A lot of times you can just stick to the Lucio heal and power yourself through. But this blade is really poor. Like they forced the D.Va. I'm not sure if they expected the D.Va bomb. I think with the way they played it, they didn't expect it because they basically hard dove the D.Va, got the self-destruct out, but then popped blade for it after they traded their tank. And so they're basically zoned this fight. I mean, but you can see like they force ults, but then they just like reset the fight where they just have to run immediately after. Like that's not the fight they wanted. I imagine they wanted to just like maybe trade tanks and then have Plumple like primal after and maybe kill Midnight and then have him not like actually live. But their blade doesn't get any value just because it's like the rest of the team's just playing on the self destruct, so he's not going to dash in and fight on the self destruct. Nero, this would have been the perfect time to actually force the blade, is where XL2 didn't have any support ults. But now that they don't have that, they're playing super aggressively here, and Shu, I think, had maybe a bit of an aggressive call here, where he was trying to run in with his team. We can rewatch it. This fight is so aggressive from Toronto. I understand what they're trying to do. They're basically trying to play balls to the wall, trying to get like a super aggressive fight in the other enemy team, but like putting your Zen in this aggressive of a position is super risky, and we can see here why. Even if it does work, it's really hard to. He gets bubbled and then gets matrixed here. Like they even beat for him, but you can see like immediately he's discorded and he's getting like extremely hard focused. It's actually super close. Like they beat and he's getting like hit through the entire beat and killed through the beat as he's rotating. Like he rotates through the entire point while Goliath is sitting over here. He barely misses the beat. Like both of them are so close to getting trans. This fight is actually insanely close. But we can see again, both of the beats were traded. Both of the Zens are dead, so it's a freer blade for Mangachu. something to pay attention to basically is just like the Tracer's HPs. Nene's been getting like really good value with his, well, Dalton's been playing like a little bit safer. Nene got the trance. They still have yet to use their own trance. Like, they get the trance right here, but Nene's playing in like the safe side of the room right here. He gets insane value. He's playing like away from the trance. Cruz basically zones himself out of the trance, and they aren't getting as much value from it. But he's been basically sitting here in the side room while they've been fighting on the point with trance, just waiting for his opportunity to actually come in and shoot people in the back. Now that the trance is actually over, he's looking to play aggressively again. Again, it's not a really good blade. Like, he ends up getting like hit with like a Discord headshot, I'm pretty sure, from Goliath, and gets punched. And then in these fights, these like really like close fights, I guess, he has to come back to the middle of the map, and monkeys are just sitting there zapping anything they can, and he just walks back into the middle of the map where he's half HP and just gets zapped down. They've had to use a ton of cooldowns now, and Nene is just able to really play aggressively here and just clean up the fight. He played alive and played super safe, and that's what actually ended up carrying them there, is like correct support usage, really close fights where Toronto was baited into using ults incorrectly. And I think I mentioned this before. This is probably part of the communication, is not understanding what to use, because they used support ults when they shouldn't have, and they used a Genji Blade when they shouldn't have, and I think their game planning was like a little bit off, and really that just ended up like really punishing them hard. And then Nene was able to like play like super safe in that fight where they had like a big ult advantage, and he was really able to just clean up the fight. This is running a bit long, but hopefully this was a good overview of this map, and hopefully I feel better so I can continue to do these and not sound as sickly.